Pick up where we left off in lesson 2.5 from Friday. And on the front, we had practice using square roots to solve some equations. And then the big thing that we'd worked on were those 5 steps for completing the square. Okay. To kind of get us back into the groove, we've got 2 more examples. Okay, so it kind of works out well. We practiced a couple on Friday. Now the key is, do you still remember how to use these steps a weekend later? Okay, so we're going to practice our completing the square steps, and then we have one other topic about vertex form, and then I don't know if we'll have work time or not. We can hope, right? Okay, so completing the square. Remember, this is an option that we can use when something doesn't factor. Okay, so if you have an equation that doesn't factor, completing the square is an option. I think it's tomorrow that we learn quadratic formula. That's also an option. Okay, so steps. You've got the steps. They're provided on that blue paper. Rewrite the equation in the form x squared plus bx equals c. What's your first step?
Add 2.
Okay, so Paul is suggesting we add the 2 over because we need the x squared and x term on the left, the number term on the right. Works for me. So 2x squared plus 12x equals 2.
Divide by 2.
Okay. We haven't quite completed step 1 yet because step 1 says it needs to be in the form x squared plus bx equals c. What's the only thing that's allowed to be in front of x squared? 1x squared. So you divide that number out if there is one. In this case, we're going to divide the 2 out. If you divide the 2, you're dividing all terms by 2, yes? So I have x squared plus 6x, I'm going to leave a gap, remember, equals 1. Not that you have to leave the gap there, but I'm anticipating our next step. Okay, step 1, check it off your mental checklist. Step 2, complete the square by adding b over 2 squared to each side of the equation. So we want this b over 2 to each side. So, now here's an important step I caught some people doing wrong on Friday. What is b?
12.
What is our current b?
Oh, 6.
Our current b is 6. So you can't, if we had to divide something, you have to use the b that we have currently. So we're going to use the idea that b is 6. Then I'm going to do b divided by 2 quantity squared. So that means 6 divided by 2 quantity squared. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. What do I do with that 9?
Put it back in there.
We're going to add it onto each side of the equation. So I'm going to put a plus 9 in that gap that I left, and I'm going to put a plus 9 on the right side of the equation. Okay, what about step 3? Factoring the left side, x squared plus 6x plus 9. I've been taking you this route, haven't I? 2 parentheses.
Yeah.
If you want to skip writing 2 parentheses because you know what's happening, go for it. But x squared breaks into x and x. What about my numbers?
Plus.
Yeah. If it multiplies to be 9 and adds to be 6, that's plus 3 plus 3. The shortcut, folks, is on completing the square. It's always going to be the square root of this number we just added. And the square root of 9 is 3. So this can be rewritten as x plus 3 squared. On the right, what is 1 plus 9? 10. Okay. Step 3?
Square root.
Or that was step 3, factored. Step 4, square root. So, we got parentheses squared, so perfect time to square root. What is the square root of x plus 3 quantity squared? X plus 3. Remember, the square root and the square cancel each other out. What is the square root of 10?
Square root.
Okay. Square root is going to stay square root of 10 because it's not a perfect square. But don't forget to throw in plus or minus the square root of 10. Remember, when you take the square root in an equation setting, include that plus or minus. And that officially takes us to step 5. Solve for x. If it's x plus 3, we know to subtract 3. X equals. How was I writing these answers on Friday?
Plus minus square root of 10.
Okay. Not saying it has to. My preference, common math practice, is to put that plus or minus in between two pieces. It just makes more sense. So if I put that minus 3 out front, it's minus 3 plus or minus the square root of 10. Can I go farther?
No.
No, because this one has square root of 10, yes? I think we had one on Friday where we could go farther, right? Because square root of 10 was something that could be worked. We could go a little farther. How many answers did I just get to this problem?
2.
2? I got negative 3 plus the square root of 10 as one answer, and negative 3 minus the square root of 10 as the second answer. Okay. Does that seem familiar then? Okay. Try and stay ahead of me. Let's practice one more. X squared minus 8x plus 17 equals 0.
Minus
What'd you say?
minus the 7.
Okay. We're going to minus the 17 in an effort to make this x squared plus bx equals c. So this is part of step 1. X squared minus 8x equals 0 minus 17 being negative 17. Is step 1 done?
No. Wait, yeah.
In this case, it's already a 1x squared, isn't it? So step 1 is done. Step 2. What do you know?
B. Negative 8.
Okay. Identify that b value. And b didn't change in this case, right? So it doesn't really matter. And then we're going to do that b over 2 quantity squared. So negative 8 divided by 2 quantity squared. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4, and negative 4 squared is 16. What are you doing with that 16?
Putting it in.
Okay. We're adding on both sides. I don't know. I didn't say leave a gap this time. Did you leave a gap?
Yep.
Okay. So we're adding it on the left and we're adding it on the right. Step 3 is to factor. Folks, if you are confident enough, go ahead and jump to knowing that this is going to be parentheses squared. If you're confident enough with that. Because it's always going to be that, if done correctly. If not, by all means, let's write out our 2 parentheses. So what do we know?
X and
So
Check your-
X.
X squared is x and x. Not 8,
4.
4, right? The square root of 16 is 4. That sign in the middle is a minus. Or multiplying to be 16 is 4 times 4. Adding to be the negative 8, it's negative 4 and negative 4. Or in other words, x minus 4 squared. Clean up the right if you haven't. Negative 17 plus 16 is negative 1. That's step 3. Step 4, square root both sides. What is the square root of x minus 4 squared? x minus 4. On the right, what do you know about the square root of negative 1? Okay, the square root of negative 1, by definition, is I. 1i or I. What else do I need there?
Plus.
Plus or minus? Maybe someone said it and I missed it, but. So, square root of negative 1 is I, as always, plus or minus. Bless you.
Thank you.
That was step 4. Step 5? Yeah, finish your solving. If it's x minus 4, I'm going to add 4. X equals,
4 plus or minus.
I would write this as 4 plus or minus I. And realizing that's not going to go any farther, is it? Okay. If you follow the steps, I'm going to claim that this is doable. Okay? That's why I give you the steps right there. You have them beside the problem. I feel like it makes these problems doable. So read the steps, follow those steps. Okay. One other topic related to completing the square. And that is being able to take an equation that is in standard form. Okay, so you remember standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c. So being able to take an equation that is in standard form and converting it to vertex form. Vertex form being the one that is a times x minus h squared plus k, where that hk represents your vertex. Okay, so we're going to work to rewrite this, and then it's state the vertex and identify it as a maximum or minimum point of the graph. So, I put some steps here. I didn't use put steps here, but I put some steps here. And this is going to look similar to what we just finished doing, but here's the difference. On these equations, one of our sides is y equals. We don't have an equal 0 where we can move stuff to the other side. Okay, and that's what makes this a little bit different. Now, first step, rewrite in the form where it's x squared plus bx, but then instead of equals c, we're just going to scoot the plus c off and put it outside of a set of parentheses. Okay, so as we think about that, for example, A, y equals. So in my parentheses, I want x squared plus bx, which in this first example is going to be x squared plus 4x. And then, notice in the steps over here, there's a blank, isn't there? So we're going to scooch the end of the parenthesis. We're going to leave a blank here. I'm going to end my parenthesis. And then what other piece of this problem do I still have? The minus 6. So whatever that value is, it just goes outside the parentheses. Okay? So that's our step 1. Step 2. Complete the square with b over 2 squared. So just what we did last time, right? Except this time, we'll come back and read this, but it's a little bit differently because you're going to add b over 2 squared inside the parentheses and subtract outside. Now, I need to pause and figure out what b is, don't I? What is my b value?
4.
B is 4. And if b is 4, what do we know? B over 2 squared, so 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. Okay. Now, when we're completing the square and solving the problem, it's add 4 on both sides, right? Well, here's the catch. Okay, I can add 4 here, but adding 4 on the other side is adding 4 to this y. I don't want a value over here. I need it to just be y equals. And so if I add 4 on the left, that's going to mess up my y equals. So, since I can't really add it over here, we've already added 4 on this side of the equation. We've got to keep it balanced, so to speak. So in order to cancel out this 4 I just added, I'm going to subtract 4. Okay? So notice it's add the value inside the parentheses, subtract it outside the parentheses. And by doing that, I'm keeping my equation balanced, because I just added 4 and subtracted 4 from the same side of the equation. So I just added 0 to it. Okay? On B and C, we'll talk about if an A value exists. We didn't have an A value here other than 1, so we didn't have to worry about that yet. Yes?
So when we subtract the 4 on the outside, can we just go ahead and clean it up?
You can if you want. I don't do that when I'm teaching because I want it, when you write it in your notes, to be able to see what we did. But yeah, you can clean up whenever you want. Okay. Step 3, just what we were doing previously. Once you add that value in there, you factor. What do you feel if I just go ahead and say parentheses squared?
Okay.
It's going to be that, right? We've done this 4 other examples. Because x squared breaks into x times x, right? So there's an x in the beginning.
Plus
What multiplies before and adds before?
2.
2 and 2, right? Or what is the square root of 4?
2.
It's 2. Plus 2 or minus 2? We're adding to be a positive 4. It's a positive b term, so plus 2. If you haven't already, clean it up outside. We had a minus 6 and we subtracted 4, and that's going to give me minus 10. Okay, folks. You just converted your first equation to vertex form.
That's it?
That's it. Well, we still have to answer the other questions of state the vertex and is it a min or a max. But we followed those 3 steps. Okay? That is now vertex form. Now, with that in mind, it also said state the vertex and identify it as a min or a max. Remember, the vertex is HK. What does that make my vertex in this example?
2. Negative 2,
Negative 2, negative 10. It's HK. My equation says minus H. So you're always using the opposite of H and then the given K. Or think about it. This plus 2 would move the graph left 2. The minus 10 moves the graph down 10. So it's the same thing as saying, oh, I'm going to go left 2, down 10. Negative 2, negative 10. And then is this vertex the maximum or the minimum point of the graph? What do you think, Patrick?
Minimum.
Because?
It's a negative, but that's not the right answer.
Because it's positive, so it'd be right side up.
What number are we talking about that's positive?
Negative 2.
The X.
Okay.
Is it minimum though?
A.
So here's the deal. You have it right. You just didn't have your reason.
I can't explain.
Okay. So here's the deal. If I go back and look at this, it's a positive x squared. What do we know about a parabola that has a positive x squared term?
Goes.
It's right side up, yes?
Yeah.
And so it would be a value right out here. We don't have an a value other than 1 here. But basically, because this is positive, that means my parabola's going to be a right side up parabola. Where is the vertex on a right side up parabola? It's at the bottom, so it is a minimum.
So do we have to put a minimum value of something?
No, it's not asking for what the value is. It's just asking for, is the vertex a maximum or a minimum? So that's just being able to recognize, does my vertex open right side up? And then the vertex is at the bottom, so it's a minimum. Or does my vertex open upside down? Then my parabola open upside down. Then my vertex is at the top, and it's a maximum.
Extra credit.
That's 3 points.
Okay.
No.
Questions on that first example? We have to kind of add one more step on B and C. That's slightly different because B and C have A values. But other than that, you guys got it. So, y equals 2x squared plus 12x plus 9. We're being asked to convert this to vertex form. So A, rewrite it in the form x squared plus bx in parentheses and then plus c. As we think about this, I think I'm going to take 2 steps to do this. What goes in the parentheses? X squared plus x, right? So 2x squared plus 12x. I'm going to go ahead and leave a gap, scooch my parentheses over, and then my c value goes outside the parentheses, yes? Have I fully matched that step 1? No. What's this catch?
There's an A value.
Yeah.
Step 2.
Well, no, this is still part of step 1. It says to rewrite in the form x squared plus bx. X squared does not have an a on it. So that means what's the only value that's allowed to be in the parentheses with x squared? And that's a 1. I don't have a 1 there. I have a 2. Okay, so here's the deal. Look what's in my parenthesis. What do these 2 pieces happen to have in common? A greatest common factor of
2.
2. So we're going to take whatever that a value is, and we're going to factor it out of those 2 terms and put it outside of your parentheses. Just those pieces. So we have a 2 in common, right? So I'm going to take 2 here. I'm going to factor it out. Then when I factor it out, 2x squared divided by 2 leaves me with x squared. 12x divided by 2 leaves me with 6x. I'm still going to leave that gap. And my plus 9 stays plus 9. It's not in the parentheses, so thankfully it doesn't matter that it doesn't divide by 2. Okay, so that's a complete step 1. When there's an a value, you have to factor it out of the a and the b term. Got it? Okay, step 2. The b over 2 business. What's b? Go with your most recent b, yes? Don't go with the original. Our current b is this 6. So if b is 6, do the math there. So b over 2, quantity squared, is going to be 6 divided by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. Okay. Here's the other half of that catch. Now, we know to add 9 on the inside and subtract 9 on the outside, yes? Just what we did up above. You're going to add whatever that value is inside the parentheses, and you're going to subtract whatever that value is outside the parentheses. There's a catch on this one, though. We had an a value, yes?
Yes.
If an a value exists, multiply the outside amount by a. So here's the deal. We added 9 in this parentheses, yes? What are these parentheses being multiplied by? 2. So is this 9 really just a 9? It's a 9 times 2. So when we subtract this 9 out here, what do we really need to be subtracting? A 9 times 2. Or yes, in other words, 18.
So that is
You can go ahead and put 18 in. Again, I do that as a teaching thing because if someone comes back and looks at my notes, I want them to be able to somewhat figure out where that random 18 came from. Okay? If you're going to remember where it came from later, you're fine. Okay. Step 3 is still the same. Step 3 is to factor. Now, that 2 is going to just hang out front. Your parentheses. Guess what? It's going to factor into 2 identical parentheses, right? X squared. Square root of x squared is going to break this into
3.
x and x. And then the square root of 9?
3.
is 3. Plus 3 or minus 3?
Plus 3.
That 6 is positive, so plus 3. Or if your brain works better the way and says what multiplies to be 9 and adds to be 6. That's also 3 and 3, isn't it? Clean up your outside if you haven't already. We have a plus 9 minus a 9 times 2. 9 times 2 is 18, so we have plus 9 minus 18 is going to make this minus 9. Okay. That is your vertex form. I need a vertex, and I need to know if it's a min or a max. What's my vertex?
-3, -9.
You guys agree? -3, -9?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not. I was just,
You guys look like, well,
No.
actually, guys.
nope. Nope, -3, -9 is right. I was just waiting to make sure other people agree. Again, it's that plus 3 in the parentheses tells us to go left 3, yes? So we use the opposite sign. And is that vertex the minimum of the parabola or the maximum? It's the minimum because,
It's negative.
Patrick,
The A value is positive.
the A value is positive, yes? That A value being positive 2 tells me my parabola opens right side up. So that means that this vertex is a minimum. Okay? And you can know that from the before you do anything with that problem, okay? Okay, let's try one more. Like right now, before I do anything with this next problem, I know whether my vertex is going to be a min or a max.
Max.
This time it's going to be a max because my A is negative, yes? So I already know, even though I haven't done anything on this problem, it's going to be a max. What I'm getting ready to do does not affect that. Okay? Okay, step 1.
Divided by -2.
Depends what you're telling me to divide by -2. Because we're not dividing everything by -2. So for that reason, I'm going to suggest we put our parentheses in first, if that makes sense. So if I put what goes in the parentheses is the -2x squared plus 20x, yes? I'm going to go ahead and leave that gap. And I'm putting that's a really big gap. Oof. And I'm going to put that minus 42 out here. So now, I know I haven't completed step 1. I need it to be 1x squared. So when Paul tells me to divide by the -2, what terms am I dividing the -2 out of?
-2x squared plus 20.
The -2x squared and the 20x. Do I divide it out of the 42? No, because it's not in the parentheses. Okay? So I know maybe you're calling it, I'm being nitpicky, but we have to understand what we're dividing -2 out. So whatever that A value is, factor it out. So I'm going to put -2 out from my parentheses. -2x squared divided by -2 leaves me with x squared. 20x divided by -2. 20 divided by -2 is minus 10x. Still leaving that gap. And I still have minus 42 hanging out back. Okay. What B value am I using? Your current B value. So -10. So we're going to take -10 and we're going to B divided by 2. So -10 divided by 2 is -5. What do you get when you square -5?
25.
Positive 25, yes? I still have some people that tell me that's a -25. When you square it, you get a positive. Okay, so we're going to take that 25. We're going to add it inside the parentheses and subtract it outside the parentheses. What's the catch?
Multiply -2.
No.
No.
Right here. This 25 I'm subtracting. Is it just a 25?
No.
Yeah, it's going to end up being positive 50 because we have to take this 25 that I added here and multiply it by -2. If there's an A value, you multiply by -2. Did I misunderstand you, Tanner?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm subtracting that 25, but I have to multiply it by -2 as well. Okay, let's factor. The -2 stays out front. I'm factoring. X squared. Square root of x squared is x. The square root of 25 is 5 plus or minus 5.
-4.
We're going to use the negative or minus 5 because 10 is negative. Or ask yourself, what multiplies to be 25 and adds to be -10? And that's -5 and -5. So the -2 out front, x minus 5 squared.
So does the 10 just disappear?
It's just like when we factor into two parentheses.
Alright.
It's just like up here, the 4 and 4 is 8.
Okay.
It's the same thing. I'm just not writing out both parentheses. It does not magically disappear. No, it's still there.
Yes, sir. We use them as more of the eye imagination.
No. Okay, -42, and then this becomes
Positive
plus 50. -42 plus 50 is
8.
plus 8. Okay. Vertex form, -2 times x minus 5 squared plus 8. You got a vertex for me?
5, 8.
Okay. This says minus 5, so we're going to use positive 5 and then positive 8. That's a maximum. Okay, because if you look at your final answer, it's because A is negative, right? A value of negative tells me that this is upside down. That puts my vertex at the top as a maximum. Okay, guys. Pay careful attention to doing homework, whether you are completing the square to solve the equation or whether you're trying to write it in vertex form. There's a slight difference in what you're doing, so watch carefully. You have, 13 minutes of work time? No. Okay, 5 minutes disappeared magically. You have like 8 minutes work time. My apologies. But use it. Get in there and get started.